Instead of reading the newspaper, having a coffee, or going for a run, why don't you start your day with a St. Olaf story? We picked 8 of our favorite Rose Nylund St. Olaf stories to kickstart your day.
This is exactly what happened during the Great Herring War.
The Great Herring War?
Yes, between the Lindstroms and the Johanssons.
Oh, that Great Herring War.
The two families controlled the most fertile herring waters off the coast of Norway, so naturally it seemed like it would be in their best interest to band together. Oh, boy, was that a mistake. You see, they couldn't agree on what to do with the herring.
Oh, well, that's understandable. I mean, the possibilities are overwhelming.
Exactly. The Johanssons wanted to pickle the herring, and the Lindstroms wanted to train him for the circus.
Weren't they kind of hard to see riding on the elephants?
Oh, not that kind of circus. A herring circus. Sort of like SeaWorld, only smaller. Much, much smaller. But bigger than a flea circus.
Tell me, Rose, did they ever shoot a herring out of a cannon?
Only once. But they shot him into a tree. After that, no other herring would do it.
You're making this up.
I am not. My grandfather told me that story. Of course, he also used to call me by my sister's name. And sometimes he'd wear his underwear on the outside of his pants. I guess he wasn't a very reliable source.
So what was this great disappointment in your life, Rose?
Butter. I wanted to be Butter Queen.
Oh, yeah. What an actress. She was so good in Gone with the Wind. I wanted to be Miss Olivia de Havilland myself.
Blanche, are you listening to this?
Bits and pieces.
Go on.
Well, Butter Queen was our town's highest honor. From the time I was born, my folks groomed me for it. Singing lessons, dancing lessons, junior butter pageants. For 16 years, my entire life revolved around butter.
You were very fortunate. So many of us wasted our youth.
When the time came for the pageant, I was incredible. I showed poise in the evening gown competition. I was brilliant in the oral butter quiz. They couldn't even trip me up with a trick margarine question. That evening, butter was spelled R-O-S-E.
Rose, you're embarrassing yourself. Please don't go on.
I have to, Dorothy. I've kept these bitter butter memories too long. As the pageant drew to its frenzied finale, there I was, alongside the other two finalists, churning my guts out. When all of a sudden, for no apparent reason, my churn jammed. Yes. And just like that, it was over. I'd lost. It was the biggest disappointment in my life. It was small consolation to find out years later there had been churn tampering involved. When I think of my father, I always picture him pulling a giant tuna up Main Street.
Well, who doesn't, Rose?
It wasn't a real tuna. It was made of chrysanthemums. It was the float in the Founders Day parade. You probably don't know this, but my hometown was founded by Heinrich von Anderdönen. The first man to ever can tuna in its own natural juices. Anyway, it was the 50th anniversary celebration of the founding of our town. My father was chosen to pull the float. He thought it was because he had the newest tractor, but actually it was because he was the only one small enough to fit into the mayonnaise jar costume. I'll never forget the moment we caught sight of him turning off a sycamore onto Elm. Something must have happened to the tractor, because there he was, this lone little mayonnaise jar, dragging this giant tuna up the hill and past the reviewing stand. I don't think I've ever been prouder in my life. Gustav Lundquist got sick from something mysterious, and he nearly died. Well, he did die, in fact. Then at the cemetery, Beatrice Lundquist, his wife, kept screaming, "He's alive, he's alive, I can hear him from the grave." Well, everybody thought it was the hallucinations of a grieving widow, so they sedated her. But when she woke up from her sedation, she told them that he said from the grave, "We never paid our 78 through 86 income taxes." And his partner said only Gustav would know that he must be alive. So they all raced to the cemetery, and the entire town started digging like crazy, kneeling by the grave, using their hands even, dirt flying and Beatrice screaming. And when they opened that coffin, there he was, dead as a doornail.
What is the point of that ridiculous story, Rose?
The point is, Gustav didn't die from his mysterious disease at all. He lived and recovered. Trouble was, he recovered while he was buried, so by the time they got to him, he died of suffocation.
I just don't believe these stories you tell, Rose.
The other tragic aspect was the IRS was waiting at the cemetery to arrest Gustav's partner, Bergstrom. So Bergstrom killed himself right then and there by grabbing the gun from Sheriff Tokvist and shooting himself. What they did then was, since the grave was still open, and everybody was right there, and Gustav and Bergstrom had been partners, so they put Bergstrom in with Gustav and had a double burial. Unfortunately, later they found out that Bergstrom wanted to be cremated.
Oh, shut up, Rose.
He worked at Lars Ericsson's drugstore and tackle shop. He was a soda jerk. Now that I think about it, he was the town jerk. Every Saturday afternoon, I'd go in and have a sundae. Well, Nils would arrange the ice cream scoops in an obscene way. I could never prove it because by the time I would take it home to show my father, the evidence had melted. To this day, every time I pass an ice cream parlor or a tackle shop, I blush. Dorothy's right. I cringe at some of the stunts I pulled when I was going through my rebellious stage.
Like what, Rose? Squeezing the cows too hard?
No. Like climbing out my bedroom window and stealing my father's truck to drive into a bar in the city to meet Clell Leitner.
Clell Leitner? I think I used that on my hair once.
Clell was the cutest boy at our high school. He was also the only sophomore old enough to get into a bar.
So, what did you do when you got there?
I sat in my father's truck for hours, paralyzed with fear. I kept thinking to myself, what is a simple Protestant farm girl doing in the parking lot of a gin mill in a flashy, fast-paced city like Tyler's Landing?
So did you get out of the truck or what?
Of course. I marched up to the door, and I ran right into Reverend Mackenzie, coming out of the bar on the arm of Millie Beasley, wife of Emmett Beasley, our town's most decorated war hero. Emmett received 3 Purple Hearts, all for head wounds. He ran the feed store in our town. Of course, if the truth be known, Millie was the one who had to make change for the customers.
Rose, are you telling a story or performing our town?
Oh, sorry. Anyway, Reverend Mackenzie made a deal with me. He said if I didn't tell on him, he wouldn't tell on me. So I went home.
Well, did he keep your secret?
Till the day he died, which was 2 days later. Emmett found Millie and the Reverend skinny dipping in the church's fountain. And he shot the both of them. A week later, we became Lutherans.
Now, he's the only one who can know when he's ready to leave. It has to be his decision.
Well, sometimes people need help making decisions. That's the way it was with Thor, our pet lamb. From the time he was first separated from his mother, he wouldn't eat, he wouldn't sleep, he wouldn't frolic with the other sheep.
You're slipping into verse, Rose. Keep it simple.
Daddy got the idea of taking this old inner tube, wrapping it in wool, and putting it next to Thor's bed at night. We named it Brunhilde. And believe it or not, it did the trick. Thor felt like he was back with his mother, and he began eating and sleeping and frolicking. Yes. But then one day, Thor got a little playful and accidentally bit Brunhilde. Poor little guy just stood there, watching his mother deflate before his very eyes. He was never the same after that. Oh, sure, once in a while he'd at the back tires of a parked car. But for the most part, he just kind of kept to himself.
I think I'm beginning to see your point.
You do?
Who cares? You want to hear the sequel?
Well, Gunilla Ulfsdattir was a nurse at Cedars of St. Olaf Hospital. One night she was taking care of Sven Bjornsson. And he asked her if she would get him some more mouth moisteners and then kill him. Gunilla brought the mouth moisteners right away, but the killing thing, it seemed to go against everything she'd been taught.
You're doing beautifully, Rose.
He begged, and by her coffee break, she couldn't stand it anymore. So she pulled the plug, and he died. Well, she was racked with guilt that night. Not only had she parked her car in a doctor's spot, but she was never sure whether Sven's pleading was the pain talking or the medication talking or the guy in the next bed talking. You see, the guy in the next bed was Ingmar von Bergen, St. Olaf's meanest ventriloquist.
Rose, we are going somewhere with this, aren't we? I mean, if not, I'm going to cut out your tongue.
Yes, Sven came back to haunt Gunilla. Since then, every Tuesday night at 10, 9 Central. She hears noises. Some say it's the wind, but some say it's Sven's voice whispering back from the other side, saying, "Turn around quick, his lips are moving."
You see that, Mom? You kill someone, you end up being a Rose Story.
Dorothy, Blanche, Sophia, and Rose in 173 episodes taught us how